His neighbors laughed when he paid $999 for 25 acres nobody wanted. But for 3 days straight, something on that land kept refusing to behave the way it should. For 3 straight days, the soil in the western corner of the property kept doing something that shouldn't have been possible. Marcus had bought the land on a Tuesday, 25 acres of exhausted earth that 2 previous owners had already given up on. The county auctioneer had almost seemed relieved when Marcus placed his bid. $999. The gavel came down without ceremony. Everyone in town knew what Marcus didn't immediately understand. The land was supposed to stay forgotten. He stood at the edge of that western corner now, watching the pattern repeat. In every other section of the property, the early September heat had turned the topsoil pale and cracked. But here, in a strip no more than 30 feet wide, the earth stayed dark. Not wet, just different. Richer. Almost alive in a way the surrounding acres were not. 3 days of observation, and each morning the pattern was identical. 3 days of something that couldn't explain itself. His father had owned this land once. Not all 25 acres, but some of them. That was nearly 40 years ago now, before the consolidation pressure, before the bank loans squeezed smaller operations until they broke, before Marcus's father had finally sold to pay debts and moved to the city to find work. He'd died there 15 years ago, in an apartment in Columbus, his hands soft from not working earth. Marcus's mother had kept his old farming journal, a leather-bound notebook with sketches and notes, observations about soil and seasons. In the margin of one page, his father had written, "The ginger section. Don't let them take this." Marcus had found that journal 2 years ago. He'd been working at a factory warehouse job, making decent money but feeling nothing, and his eyes had caught on that single line. "Don't let them take this." The banker, Richard Caldwell, had first suggested the purchase as a joke. "Your old man's land is coming up for auction," Caldwell had said, sliding the notice across his desk. Marcus had applied for a small business loan 6 months earlier, trying to start a specialty crop operation. Caldwell had turned him down twice. Too risky, insufficient capital, no market data. But this land was different. This land was so cheap it wasn't even a real investment. It was a concession. "Buy it if you want," Caldwell had said, "but don't come asking for equipment loans afterward. Banks don't finance failing properties." The warning should have been clear. Marcus had spent the first week clearing the surface debris. Old rusted fencing, broken pallets, the scattered remains of equipment that had been abandoned decades ago. His neighbor, Tom Kowalski, had watched from the property line and shaken his head. "Your father couldn't make it work," Tom had said, and there was something in his tone that suggested he knew more than he was saying. Land doesn't forgive. But the dark soil section remained. Each morning, unchanged. Each evening, still different. By the second week, Marcus had begun testing. He'd brought in samples, sent them to the County Agricultural Extension Office. The results came back standard, nothing exceptional. Slightly higher organic matter than surrounding sections, but nothing that explained the difference. The extension agent, Dr. Patricia Yun, had seemed puzzled by his persistence. "It's good earth," she'd said, "but not unusually so. Why does this specific strip matter so much?" Marcus hadn't known how to explain a feeling. A pattern that didn't make sense. A line that seemed to separate 2 worlds. Then, 3 weeks into ownership, something shifted. Marcus had planted heritage ginger rhizomes along the edges of the dark soil section, a variety his father had sourced from a specialty seed catalog decades ago. The note in the journal identified them, Bengal Blue. Old American Heirloom. Flavor profile is irreplaceable if soil is right. The rhizomes sprouted within 14 days. Everywhere else on the property, the spring plantings Marcus had attempted had struggled. Stunted growth. Pale leaves. The nursery said it was the soil composition, the water tables, the pH levels. But along that dark section, the Bengal Blue ginger came up strong. Vibrant green. The stems thick and confident as if they'd been waiting for exactly this moment to grow. By midsummer, Tom had stopped by again. This time, he wasn't skeptical, he was nervous. "I need to tell you something," Tom said, standing at the property line. "About the land. About why people don't want it." Marcus waited. "Your father used to grow ginger here," Tom said quietly. Special ginger. Back in the 70s, he was producing heritage varieties that were worth more than twice what regular ginger commanded. Restaurants were buying from him directly. He had a specialty market set up, direct sales. Then the consolidation started. Banks pushed smaller operations to scale up or get out. Your father tried to hold on, but the debt mounted. When he finally had to sell, the buyer was a corporation trying to consolidate regional production into monoculture. They didn't want heritage crops, they wanted volume. They plowed everything under and planted commodity ginger using chemical inputs. But the soil, something in that soil remembered. The heritage ginger kept trying to come back for years, even under the new crop. "How do you know this?" Marcus asked. "My father farmed this county his whole life," Tom said. He remembered your father's operation. He also remembered when the consolidation buyer went bankrupt after 5 years. The land sat empty after that. Every farmer in the county knew why. The soil had been damaged, poisoned, worked to exhaustion. Nobody wanted to inherit that problem. That was the moment Marcus understood. The dark soil wasn't a mystery to solve. It was a memory trying to resurrect itself. He had 3 weeks before the bank's quarterly property review. Caldwell had made it clear, if Marcus couldn't show measurable agricultural productivity, the loan status would be reconsidered. Reconsidered meant foreclosure proceeding. The ginger grew fast through late summer. By August, Marcus had nearly 200 kilograms of Bengal Blue heritage rhizomes harvested from that dark soil section. The quality was extraordinary, the flesh deep orange, the aroma complex and multi-layered, nothing like the pale industrial ginger stocked in supermarket chains. He'd sent samples to 3 specialty food distributors. 2 rejected them, no established supply contract. 1 asked for more information. Then, 2 days before Caldwell's review visit, Marcus found the message on his truck windshield. Typed, unsigned, folded in half. "Stop the heritage ginger operation. The consolidation company is coming back to the region. They don't want competition from small producers with established markets. Sell the land to them now, or they will make it impossible for you to operate." Marcus's hands had shaken reading it. He'd kept the note but said nothing. To whom would he report a threat like that? Caldwell knew about it already. The banker had obviously heard rumors through the consolidation company's representatives. That evening, Marcus drove to his mother's house in Columbus. He'd brought the journal with him, and he read it to her slowly, her favorite passages about the ginger section, her favorite memories of his father working the land. When he finished, she'd looked at him for a long moment. "He was stubborn," she'd said finally. "He believed that some things were worth losing money for. I spent 40 years wishing he'd been more practical. But standing here, looking at you, I think maybe he was right about something." The day before Caldwell's visit, a man in an expensive suit had appeared at the property. He introduced himself as representing Consolidated Agricultural Resources. "We're interested in purchasing your land," the man said. "The heritage ginger operation could be shut down and consolidated into our regional distribution network. We'd pay you $30,000, 3 times what you invested." "The land isn't for sale," Marcus had said. "Everything is for sale," the man replied. "Given enough pressure." Caldwell arrived the next morning, walking the property with a clipboard and a skeptical expression. They stood together in the ginger section, and for a moment, the banker said nothing. "This is good growth," Caldwell finally acknowledged. "But growth isn't revenue. Have you secured any contracts?" "Working on it," Marcus had said. 3 distributors are considering samples." "Working on it isn't good enough for loan criteria," Caldwell said. He made notes on his clipboard. "I'm flagging this as high risk. If you don't have signed contracts within 60 days, we'll need to discuss restructuring your loan terms." Restructuring meant foreclosure. Marcus had 60 days. The 3rd distributor, a specialty gourmet supplier based in Philadelphia, came back with an offer. They wanted 200 kilograms per season at premium pricing. $20 per kilogram. $4,000 per season, guaranteed, with the option to expand to 400 kilograms if the quality remained consistent. Marcus signed the contract on a Saturday morning. He sent copies to Caldwell on Monday. Caldwell didn't respond for a week. When he finally called, His tone had shifted. $4,000 per season, Caldwell said, based on a single-season contract from an unproven distributor. That's not enough to justify keeping the land as agricultural collateral long-term. But it's also not enough to trigger foreclosure. You're in a holding pattern, Marcus. One bad season, one broken contract, and this land becomes a liability the bank won't carry. Marcus understood the subtext. One season of failure, and everything was over. The first season closed with $4,200 in revenue after expenses. The distributor requested expansion to 400 kilograms. The consolidation company's representatives stopped appearing. By the second season, the revenue had doubled. By the third, Marcus had leased an additional 5 acres from Tom Kowalski, land that had been abandoned for 15 years but was responding to the same careful cultivation that had worked on the original section. 2 years after the property review, Caldwell retired. The new loan manager barely glanced at the file. Heritage ginger production wasn't a risk anymore. It was a recognized agricultural commodity with established markets and proven income. Marcus stood in the ginger section on a morning in early September, 3 years after the purchase, and watched the harvest crew begin moving through the rows. 40 people from the county, seasonal work, genuine employment that hadn't existed before. His distributor had expanded to specialty restaurants in 6 states. His mother had moved back to the region and helped manage the direct-to-consumer sales side. Tom Kowalski had leased him another 8 acres. That afternoon, Marcus opened his father's journal again. He'd read it so many times that the pages had softened, the spine cracked from handling. He turned to the page with the notation, the ginger section. Don't let them take this. He understood now what his father had been trying to say. Not that the land was precious because of what grew there, but that some places hold memory. Some soil remembers the care that went into it, the intention that shaped it. His father hadn't been protecting dirt. He had been protecting a vision of what the land could be if someone was patient enough to listen to what it was already trying to say. The dark earth had never been a mystery. It had been a promise, waiting for someone willing to keep it.